Recorded July 22nd, 2024. Good afternoon, Brody. Good afternoon, Roderick. Or good afternoon, Rodney. Good afternoon.
Whatever you want to call me. I answer mostly to hey, so that's fine.
Hey.
Hey.
Well, hey.
Hey, you.
What's up with week 2, Brody?
Week 2 back from parental leave. Week 1, gentlemen, I was like, I just forgot how to go on computers, just forgot how to podcast. So I was kind of a deer in the headlights when the show came on because like little girl was having a time. So like last week I was kind of like a write-off. I got one good question in, and this week I kind of got my setup going. All right, kind of. But I got some more equipment coming. The whole office needs to.
When are you going to introduce? We're going to have to introduce her to the show. Your new edition.
We're gonna keep her off camera for the public internet, but I'll be happy to send you 2 pictures anytime you want, and I'll get on a video call if you want.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm the chief privacy officer in our house. We had a privacy meeting, and the internet's just a big, evil, mean place. So
it is.
Yeah.
It
I get offended all the time.
It is cold and cruel. Well, Rod, you didn't bring the grandbaby on live.
She's here. Well, both of them are here, actually.
No pressure.
No pressure.
I have to think about that.
See, good for the gander and the goose, right?
Yeah.
See, I was just putting you out there, Brody, exposing you.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah.
Hey, it's at least
I'm thinking about it. I may, I'll do like blur her face or something. I don't know.
That's kind of where I'm at with.
I can use AI to reconstruct. We are here to talk about something that's really cool to celebrate one of our own, some achievements and some collaboration. And I know that it could be easy today to talk about what happened starting last Wednesday night, early morning, Thursday, and everything else with the 2 things that happened, according to how informed you are. If you're uninformed, Microsoft had a major meltdown on their endpoints and caused a bruising of death across every workload in modern civilization. If you took time to read and not be bought into sensationalism because of lazy reporting and those who so-called have these expert tech commentators who just say this is the easy way to write, you would have understood that Microsoft was not the perpetrator of the outage. It was a recipient because we're the most, prolific user endpoint operating system on the planet. And say server, the more Linux servers out there than Windows servers. We know that. We're talking about endpoints. This show does not have enough time to talk about that, this particular show. Whether we will introduce a shim show to come in and short cycle it, because it warrants discussion. Not a time to throw rocks, throw shade, throw your hand out, clapping yourself on the back, Microsoft. But there's some interesting things that were taken away from this. The tech people who are out there in the world, big shout outs to the system admin people. This was not a security issue. This was the ability to come in from an administrative perspective and do it. Whether security components or security, actors in it, as far as software, yes. We'll save for the show. I was firsthand affected by this, canceling flights, jumping through hoops, walking through airports, and seeing who sort of either had great endpoint lifecycle control, that even if they were using CrowdStrike, they weren't affected, but it had nothing to do with them dodging the bullet. It's the way that they trust but verify. And we talked about it on the show. No matter who they are, you trust but verify. And then there's obviously those who did not run CrowdStrike as their security overlay product to be able to look at. We'll talk about it later. It happened. It's still happening. I think what's more interesting than the tech piece, because I was able to pick up the tech piece and you were too, about how it happened. But I want to see the outlaw. I want to see what is going to be the fallout. There are hundreds of millions of dollars lost, right? You having to pay people to stay at work. Mm-hmm. You definitely killed a lot of goodwill. You made some enemies who don't quite understand that. And I think the biggest thing I would take away from this is a huge lack of accountability just to stand forward. Whatever happened to leaders standing forward?
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
I'll let Rod finish. Okay. I'm going to get on a minor soapbox, and then we can go to our guys.
Yeah, I'll get you. Yeah. I was just going to say before you get on your soapbox, I was correct. We talked about stock prices. I was correct about the number, by the way.
Oh, you and
Man,
Brody?
Rod picking the price. Yeah.
No, you and I, Edward, we were like,
Oh,
hey,
yes.
we should. Yeah, I was, absolutely correct.
So we get on the show because never let a good crisis go unused, right? But I am happy for, the IT people. Sometimes we command very good salaries for what we do in our skill set. And a lot of times, don't let IT, people tell you we work hard all the time. There are some times when you get stuff right, you do get a lot of love time. You earned your money this time through no fault of your own. A lot of folks were calling me like, "What's going on, Ed?" I'm like, dude, it happens. But the way it happens, there's a deeper discussion that needs to be had. And so, if you're Microsoft, you're Sentinel One, you're Palo Alto, put it in your back pocket, but eat it because everybody has their time. It happens. It comes and it gets you right.
Good call.
So
can I do a summary super
quick?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay, so just to summarize, so it started. Customers in the central U.S. region experienced some issues with Azure services. It was a storage incident with virtual machines, and that triggered a Cosmos DB issue on Azure as well, right? And it was still like 99.94% available, but there was still a significant customer base that was affected. And then immediately along the same times, I don't have the exact timelines, that's when the CrowdStrike update occurred, right, affecting systems globally, right, and it was on Windows-based endpoints. So it was a back-to-back, issues that kind of came out. And I think that helped blur the communication lines. To your point, Edward. So that was tough. And I wrote up a little thing, and I won't take up all the time for the guests, but I just wanted to say, overall, this sucks, right? Overall, this sucks. It sucks for the consumers of services across the globe, right? Edward, your travel. I had a friend who was in a hospital. Her nephew was celebrating beating cancer, and all of the machines in the hospital room were blue screens of death. She got a picture, right? Just like it's just like it's wild, right? Medical, education, coffee shops, you name it, right? Everybody, tons of people were affected, right? So it sucks for the consumers and it sucks for the customers of CrowdStrike. Like you said, revenue loss, satisfaction scores, escalations. People don't care oh no, it's this vendor that we have, and they don't care, right? They're mad at you for not being able to provide the service that they want, right? They're going to say, well, you should have planned better, and I'm not going to get into all that, but it sucks for the customers. Customers who are also Microsoft's customers, right? Our exact same, we have well, everyone's kind of Microsoft customer in a way, right? But same customers that we have. And, this could impact how certain organizations roll out CrowdStrike updates in the future or security updates. Maybe they're worried now. Maybe I want to pump the brakes. I want to wait a week. I want to wait and see if there's a big situation. And that could lead to a security issue. Patching has already been a problem, right? Now patching could be a bigger problem. So those are conversations that need to be had about regression testing and do we trust the update, right? Trust is a big issue now, Edward. You just brought that up. So it is a security issue in that sense, and it sucks for the CrowdStrike team for sure, right? Because it's going to impact their sales, it's going to impact revenue, and there's people that behind those sales and their revenue and their jobs and livelihoods are going to be affected. Maybe they don't send a kid to school. Maybe they can't get a critical vehicle repaired, right? Because of this incident. Sucks for them, sucks for the frontline support teams. They have to field all these calls and hear it, for hours on the phone, right? Turning down the volume sucks for them. I've been there. And it definitely sucks for the engineering team who pushed the update because they're feeling guilt, right? And they're feeling out of shame. And it could affect their livelihoods as well in a negative way, potentially. So it sucks for the CrowdStrike team. And Edward, you nailed it. It definitely sucks for the sysadmin community, right? It could be, my people, right? A person in a local data center, they've been there for hours, they're plugged into a rack, they're cold and hungry because the AC's jammed and you can't bring food in, and you're just dropping sys files, you're remote desktoping into machines, or you're bashing into machines, or you've got to drive to a remote location, right? Hours away from your family, and you have to just to go fix one machine that's critical to the whole operation and drive 4 hours back, right? Sucks for them. And to your point, it wears on your attitude, makes you question your profession sometimes. And you just lost a whole weekend, right, in the summer with your family or your friends or whatever your plans were. And then you're feeling maximum pressure from your employer, right? Just get it done, I don't care, just get it done, get out there, right? So definitely sucks for the sysadmin teams. And yeah, it's all around. But like the good news from all this is I was really impressed to see that Microsoft was releasing some support tools to help automate the resolution process, right? That's important. We don't whether or not, I'm not going to get into like, oh, they're perfect or they're not perfect or everything's fixed and everything's good, but like at least Microsoft's trying to help, and I think that's important, right? So net,
well, it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't
if you don't.
situation, though, because we produce the tool to help people. Now it goes back to being a Microsoft issue.
Yeah,
and you have to
when you own the lion's share of the operating systems out in the universe, I mean, you're just gonna have to, be a part of it at one point, right? And then super quick, and I'm almost done. So if you're a leader of one of these organizations, of these support teams, praise and rewards goes a long way. Pizza's one thing, that's nice, but reward your people, like Edward said, right? Like, this is important. This is how you get people to stick around. You treat them really good in these situations, and they'll treat you good in the future situations. So take care of your people. If anybody from CrowdStrike listens to this show, hang in there. This will pass, right? This too shall pass. Sucks right now. These kind of things suck. And just of note, we're all Microsoft team, but like we need strong competition in the industry. Microsoft needs CrowdStrikes. CrowdStrikes need Microsoft. We need strong players across the board, pushing one another to get better. That's how we're going to have broad security resilience across governments, communities, and people. So net,
and we need to support each other, by the way.
Exactly. And that was kind of like the whole putting a bow on this whole thing, just saying, hey, let's just help each other out. I mean, the memes were hilarious that day. I'm not gonna
the memes are things of epic proportion.
Yeah.
But I think that the IT individuals, and we're almost at the time we need to get our guests on really, really quick. And I think we should have a separate show just to and then have our listeners be very active. I want your opinions actively in this, right? But here's a bigger thing. The IT individuals, the sysadmins, and everybody else, and everybody that chipped in, you went in, you did your job, you highlighted your expertise. But big shout out to the regular end user. Think of how much of an impact this was of all the remote users and your average end user you had to convert over a phone line to an IT person. I've seen creative ideas where they had to, well, I'm gonna send this file to you to your personal email address, put it on this, walk over to your work machine and go do this because everybody's working remote.
Yeah.
So you just can't show up at people's house now. You ask them to get in a car and come to you. There was some really cool, workarounds and how the remote support people had to get regular people involved to do this because when this first happened, a lot of folks called me and said, I saw this happen, I've seen it before, it's no big deal. They held down the button, brought it back up, you still got a blue screen. So now they're not knowing what's going on, and now they're trying to get called on a Friday. We'll have a separate show about it.
Good call.
Big shout out to those who are affected by technology.
Everyone. Big shout out to
you get a kudos the individuals who were at the airlines who were getting yelled at, and everybody who used the technology who couldn't do their job because the technology failed them, and the gas face and the bug eye to the leadership who still refuse to stand forward and say this is on us, because you were more concerned about protecting your stock price than it was for you to stand up and be a leader. That's my problem with it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good point.
Hey.
Anything else to that? Hey, I have a great way to segue to our guests.
Oh, what's that?
As usual.
Speaking of CrowdStrike, here's a KQL query. A couple of them actually looking for the CrowdStrike stuff, because that our threat actors in the world took advantage of the situation and created some phishing emails and stuff like that.
Oh, this is easy. Oh,
yeah.
this is low brow. I'm looking at some of the adversarial pages where people out here making these exploits, and you know how my evil mind is working. I'm like, oh, this can be weaponized. I know where the updates go now, and I know where the trusted folders now. So don't think that the people out there are trying to weaponize this life cycle and this update thing. It's how much you trust that the operating system, trust that security software or security overlay to write into certain directories and what happened. So bet your ass that people who sit in the room who know coding, who are writing exploits, and all the APTs out there are looking at this and say, how do we weaponize this?
Yeah.
It's happening. And if this thing can truly be weaponized without some compensating controls being put in so it doesn't happen, you think this is bad. Take Spectre, Meltdown, this, and add a little bit of that SSH exploit that almost got out, and that's what you're going to have. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I already got my sticks and stones and my rocks and my roll-up radio to be ready for it. But we're not doomsayers on here. We are a show of highly opinionated facts, and we'll have a show and we'll talk about it. But we also want our listeners to have your opportunity to say how does it impact you. We want to hear and all those about it. It's in the past now. It'll be fixed. But look what we got.
What's that, Rod?
I don't know. Just showed up on my desk today. I'm gonna have to ask my grandkids if they brought something over. No, actually, we have some guests for the show tonight. It's not just us.
Grandkids have books?
I'd like to bring to the screen. We have another one that might actually join here in a little bit. But we have Carissa and Mark. Carissa, would you like to introduce yourself? And then we'll pass the conch to Mark.
Sure. My name is Carissa Coatmans, and thank you for having me on here. I've been working for Microsoft almost 10 years. I guess it'll be 10 years next year. And I currently work on the feature of ID protection, formerly known identity protection, in Microsoft Entra ID. So just happy to be here and talk some KQL with you guys.
Cool.
All right. And I'm Mark Morzinski. I'm a product manager in the security customer experience team. I've been here for 14 years now, and I'm not nearly as good at KQL as Rod or Carissa or Matt. If he turns out I'm like the worst KQL author you'll ever meet.
Well,
you are a legend according to the comments.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm finally putting a face to the name. I've seen that name several times. Like, oh, this is him.
I really wanted you to try to pronounce that name. Actually, I looked it up on the web. I'm like, how do you pronounce Mark's last name?
So I think correctly, so don't worry about it.
So I think it's probably important to kind of set our discussion. Mark, I believe, is the one that started this whole thing. Is like, we need to do something. So yeah, Mark, share that story about how you, I don't know, lured people into helping you with this book.
Yeah, so actually it's Carissa who was like, I really think we should do a KQL book. And I was like, but I'm not that good at KQL. And she's like, it's okay. You write the basic stuff and I'll write the advanced stuff. And that was the path we were going to go on. And then I won't spoil anything, Chris would say, but she had some way major life events taking place, much more bigger than this book or anything work related. So then we decided to see if there was other people that could maybe help. And we gave it to Matt and some of his folks on the Dart team at the time. And they kind of slow rolled it, and I was getting annoyed, and I was like, we really should do this, and let's go back to doing this again. So Matt was still able to do it, but then one of his coworkers wasn't. So then we asked Rod, who is the well-known KQ expert. So between us three and Chris being the technical reviewer and providing lots of awesome ideas and feedback for us, that's how the book came to be. And then that was the easy part. Then we had to do the actual writing, right? That's the slow hard part.
So, definitely Rod Trent's considered one of the KQL foundational experts here, right? How I find it when people make very super declarative statements, the definitive guide. What makes it definitive? I mean, how do you? It's been out there a while now. Just because you're a friend, Rod, I'll go in and equal opportunity. You get no pass.
You know how I am with marketing. Everything has to be definitive. Everybody wants anything with the word definitive on it. So.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm trying to ask is that KQL is not new anymore. It's actually older than most people think it is, but it really got highlighted as it had a more security focused persona that came to being as a hunting language for our Defender products. But at this point in time, when you wrote the book, how do you choose the topics? Did you go, well, let's assume people don't know anything about KQL, or let's start at an intermediate level. How do you go about getting the book where it crosses enough people that everybody gets value to it, right? Was that a hard thing to do? Because as the internet runs, you're trying to keep pace. How do you guys go about that?
I kind of
Carissa?
want to take a stab at that because
Yeah.
the reason I
Go.
want to is because I also have a very good idea of like how we thought about it and then how you guys embraced it. And so in with KQL, I feel like there's a lot of people who want to learn more based on their data, right? They want to use their data to learn it. And then a lot of the programs are like online, like learning guides don't necessarily use data that makes any sense. They can, they'll use like weather data. And it's like, okay, how does this actually apply to what I'm doing? And so we really wanted to use it in terms of like, how do you use it to find threats, or how is it related to identity and cybersecurity and all the logs that we have? And so we started to do that kind of outline. But then when Mark got these great guys, Rod and Matt, to write with him, they broke it out really well. They broke it like anybody who is any level of KQL will get a huge benefit from this book. Like you can be the very basic or you can be super advanced and you're going to learn something. So nice. I think that's how we like approached it. And I feel like you guys executed that 100%.
Very cool.
Yeah, we definitely wanted it to be intro friendly. I think a lot of people search for KQL for some problem they're trying to solve, and they get it and they copy pasta in, right, and like let it rip, and they keep messing with it till the data looks right, and they don't understand why certain things are the way they are. So that was a deliberate approach to like anyone that has no experience can start at chapter 1 and kind of work their way forward. But if you have a pretty good handle, you could probably skim the first couple of chapters and then get into some of the more advanced and threat hunting related scenarios. But we wanted it specifically for anybody.
Well, and another piece I think is that we wanted it to be super interactive because it's KQL. I learn best, and I know a lot of people like me learn best by putting their hands on keyboard, right? And so there's an entire GitHub repository out here for every script, every query that is in even the data sources that exist in that book. So you can actually go out here and grab everything. It's organized pretty well, I think. So.
Nice.
Yeah. Rod
I mean, to Chris's point, so let's one last thing. So to Chris's point, like people learn best with their stuff. So every query in the book is something you should run in your environment. Like you will pull the thread when you run a query and you go, oh, that's weird that there's sign-ins that are coming with no conditional access policy being applied. Like I thought I had coverage of that. And then you should go follow that through and keep running the queries to see the results that you're expecting in your environment. Like you will really learn this if you like live it day in and day out. And we actually asked about 50 other people, the other Microsoft folks, like, hey, what are the queries you use? And Carissa wrote some awesome ones for us, like really joining a couple of things across different tables and stuff. But there's a ton of actual, like, these are real queries that people run and you should run it in your environment too. Looks like we have Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Good evening, everyone. Evening here.
Matt Z. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
He's a friend of the show, by the way. And
yeah. I've seen him in a while. He has... His hair's throwing me off. I thought he had a big old bush. Now he's got all slim now. You're almost there, Matt. Almost there. So, that's a very good answer, Carissa and Mark. I don't have the book. I thought I was a friend, one of the authors. One would have sort of been at my door, right? Add to my library, but that's okay.
See your credit card.
Taking money out of our pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have a surprise for you, once I get the book in hand. So I'd like to, if it comes through, I'd like to get all you guys back on for something I'm trying to do with your book. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Level a table.
Say what?
Level a table.
No, you want me to put it out there? I'll put it out there. I approached one of the local community and technical colleges who asked me something about a KQL course, and if they do have it, I said I think that this book that's going to come out should be part of the official curriculum that your students should have to buy the book.
Awesome.
So I got to meet with them next week. If it happens, I'll let you guys know the details. But they were like, well, it's not like Python or JavaScript or everything else. I said, it is it's effective querying language that is used by one of the most prominent vendors in the world. It is not a depreciating skill. I'm not teaching you Fortran, or that's a little bit extreme, but you get what I'm saying. I'm not teaching you Ruby on Rails. With this, you could be a data scientist or a security expert.
Mhm.
You go that route. So I'll let you guys know about that. It was some good reception to it. So within the book, how do you make it fun? I'm all about hands on keyboard, but when I think about all the things that have come out with the detective series and a few other things, how do you guys make it fun? Because Rod is the king of putting Easter eggs and stuff. If you look closely enough, you go, why is that $6 million man right there doing that in the output? You can see it. So did you guys make it fun in there? Do I have to go run through the book to find the Easter egg? Everybody smiles.
I think you're gonna love the writing. Like honestly, because I had to read all of it. I was the technical editor and I read through everything, and I actually laughed out loud, which I like. It's not that I just like laugh at anything, but it was like there's some humor built into the book, and that is also very difficult to do in such a technical discussion. They made it fun and funny, so you guys should read it, and then you can disagree with me. But first, you have to read it.
Challenge accepted.
So it sounds like somebody was writing while they were sleepy in the middle of the night and thought themselves clever. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, tell your CCNA story. I think that's a good kind of how you thought about it.
Yeah, so when I was first getting into IT, I wanted to be a network engineer, and Cisco at the time, and they probably still are. They're kind of the gold standard of networking. So I wanted to do my CCNA because it was like the entry level cert, and I bought this book. It was the most dry, awful. It just nearly killed my love of computers and networking instantly. It was just the worst thing. So I picked up a different CCNA book from a third party, and it was clearly written by someone that was just ultra passionate networking and loved it. And you could feel that through the writing. So when we wrote this, I wanted that to kind of come forth. I want people to know that the people who wrote it and the review, we're passionate about this stuff. We live it. We're not writing a book for any other reason to kind of share our love for it. So yeah, that really helped. Every time I wrote something, I was like, is this interesting? Is it not just stuff you can read off the official docs? It's very real world. And yeah, that's how I approached it.
Very cool.
For those,
I had a similar view. I wanted to write it for people, I think of coworkers or friends that are in the tech field that they have a good understanding, but they just don't know KQL, right? So I'm not trying to write a manual. You're trying to be kind of conversational-ish a little bit, but kind of walking through. This is if I was explaining to someone, this is how I would walk through. This is how to do the thing, right? So that's kind of that's the style I kind of took to it.
So do you go through scenarios like, hey, here's a scenario you want to address, and then here's how ways you could address it? That's kind of okay. That's nice. That's nice to follow along with.
Yeah. I mean, in the intro, which is the first two, which as I wrote was more how to use the basic tools and stuff like that. I tried to give scenarios that you would well, if you have this many sign-in logs, how do you parse the user agent string to look for weird stuff? Right? That's a real thing that you should go do. And that's a lot of data that's different and there's things to pull out. So it's more, it's like that. And then Matt has some excellent, very specific, email compromise. Here's how you go search for that type of stuff. So it's kind of both ranges.
Very cool.
I look forward to getting my hands on the book and I buy the book, so I'm not taking them out your pocket, Rod, and I put it on my shelf over here because I like paper. I'm old school. I love the touch of paper. But did you guys include any humor it's Friday at 4:20 and your boss is coming to you and say, let me know how many people have done this and so. How KQL saved my weekend and my marriage. Do you guys have chapters like that? That would be some great titles. I tell Rod, let me give you some of the titles for the chapters, right? Whether as you wrote the book and got further along, did you take more levity with it and sort to try to be more funny and see if people are paying attention? Do you do it that way, or there's a very because as I understand it, the publishers are sort of very strict. As how you format stuff, right? Timelines, don't miss it, so and so. So, am I thinking that it's not as liberal as I think when you have to write a book? Because I've thought about it a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about maybe I'll say how the MS Press process works, and then maybe Rod, you can talk about some of the other ones you've done, and then Chris and Matt can chime in as well. So basically, for MS Press, regardless if you're an employee or not, there is a submission form, and you basically have to fill out a template of like rough title idea, what the topics covered, what is the outline, about how many pages each thing would be, and then what the delivery dates are going to be for each of those sections. So you submit that, and then they go away for 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. And either way, it's great, right? Because if they say no, you're like, oh, I don't have to do anything. This is amazing. Like, we tried it, it didn't work. We're done. But they say yes, then you get a contract, and you have to, like, you sign it, you get paid on delivery, and you have certain dates that you have to meet from an author's perspective. And then you turn all that in. I think Chris, you look at it, and then you give it back to the editor, and then the actual editor will come through, and you will destroy all of your beautiful, clever writing you thought, because he'll just like chop it up, or they'll chop it up just to no end. And yeah, it has to meet certain formatting requirements for like things like alt text. So when people read the digital edition, like, for the visually impaired, like that's like type of stuff, has to meet certain margins for printing and formatting and that kind of stuff. So, but usually I think it was like 9 months, I think, total, from like we submitted it to like we had to finish our chapters, and like then they give you like another month to like or a couple weeks when they give you the edited to like do revision. Then you have to keep re-reviewing it, like, okay, this is the print layout, does it does this look right, did the editor make some changes that they didn't understand, or like we had that problem on some of Matt's queries were very, very long, so they kept doing like carriage returns to move it down, which is like fine because they have to print it, but then like it's going to break the query, right? So you can't do it that way. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
And Rod, how about your other books publishing? Is it similar style?
So yeah, publishing is an interesting thing. I actually started my career publishing books or writing books, and I took a long hiatus.
Yeah, we should probably add that Rod said he was never going to write another book.
I was
and then
never going to write a book ever again.
And then he said, okay, this will be the last one I do. It's too important. KQL is too important. I got to get this right. And now he's doing like 5 other books.
Yeah, so you got back into it?
He's got 5 other books in the queue.
I have a Copilot for Security book that I'm writing right now. And then a couple other things. But the process is interesting. At least this book, I truly have to tell you, this was probably the best book that I worked on, because we each took our own section instead of, we had input, but we each kind of wrote our own section. So I didn't have to spend as much laborious, mind-breaking time trying to, figure this out and stuff like that. So it really,
I would say we put a lot of effort into the outline of what topics were going to be in each section. So we did more work up front, so that way people could just write and and we did do some cross checking, like, hey, are you going to cover this deeper and things like that? But we did a good outline, I think, at the beginning.
Somebody mentioned earlier, asking about the outline. This is, by the way, and I'll pass the conch here to someone else, but this is the first book ever that has its own Copilot for Security plugin. You can install it in Copilot for Security, and you can ask anything about this book you want. In fact, I just asked to give me an outline of the book, and there's the entire outline of this book.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
As I go through some of your previous riveting works, which is IS 5.0 with Rod Trent here.
Oh my God.
My first book ever was on SMS Installer, and that one, it was interesting. McGraw-Hill at the time reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to write this book. And I said, no. I said, I want to write this book. And I gave them the outline. I said, this one's going to do great. And they trusted me. And I wrote this book. And yeah, it was probably one of the best sellers McGraw-Hill had at the time.
And I had both of them over there, your SMS books over there back in the day. Yeah, it cost me my job following that book. I just kidding.
I got a question for Carissa. You're the technical reviewer on a book with a bunch of other KQL nerds. So did you have to tell these folks like if they were wrong sometimes, or like how did that go down? I'm just curious what the dynamic was like there. Yeah.
No, so honestly, I basically tested it in the sense I read through it and would test all of their queries. And to me, if it made sense, earpod fell out. If it made sense and I didn't see any errors, like it ran for me. It's not like I went in and be like, why did you write it like this? Because I think KQL is one of those languages where everybody can approach it differently, to be honest. Like I think everybody could probably write that query a little bit differently. And so if it ran and it made sense and I got data back, I was like, score, and moved on to the next one. And so there was very little feedback, and you guys probably can comment on like if my feedback was helpful or not. But I really think the biggest part the hardest part was sometimes like I think Rod's part was more operational, and I don't work in that, in that field. And so I had to like put on a different hat for his chapters, which is so great about this book because it's like covers so many different aspects. But like his chapters were more challenging for me because of like his experience and like how he wrote them. And what they covered was more far removed from what I use KQL for example.
Yeah, and that's another aspect. That's another good thing to highlight. It is. We
Yes.
talk about advanced security and stuff like that, but we also jump into like some data science stuff as well, just to kind of tip the scale over to that side for people that are interested in that piece or that part of KQL.
That's cool. That's really cool. Now, team, Carissa asked, was her feedback helpful?
Yeah.
Let's get it out right in the open here. Matt, Mark.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
no,
I could see
the whole review process was really great. So firstly, Carissa, like her feedback was amazing, and then getting the book reviewed by like an official technical reviewer was really interesting. So someone that reviews technical books as a living, they're not Cousteau experts. They give you a really good perspective where they're telling you, oh, you're assuming knowledge here that you've not kind of explained and things like that, which is really cool. And that's not something you think about because you kind of bring your knowledge to it. So that was really great. So we think the book's really approachable, which is what we always wanted, and getting that like independent look at it. And then I also think I'm like pretty strong with grammar, and then it turns out you're not, and you're complete trash when someone looks at it. So you're like, oh, so that was cool.
I mean, Chris's feedback was super, super helpful the entire time, especially as we were working through scenarios, which we thought would make the most sense. So she gave the book is much, much better because of her input for sure.
Awesome.
Big time. And then the operational part, operations is security. Like we said at the beginning, like good operations is good security. So it's not like, oh, you would do other security stuff, and like if you have missed patches or something, like that's that's not secure. Like that is secure. Like good operations is good service. Being able to tell, hey, this thing went to talk to Key Vault and it wasn't supposed to. Is that because someone misconfigured it and it's just talking to the wrong Key Vault? Or is that because a malicious person, like an adversary, is in there trying to get access to a Key Vault and they can't, right? Like are they falling over stuff, and like that's a detection that you should be taking action on. So good operations is good security. We talked about like in the first, I think, introduction.
That statement resonates more pronounced than you probably meant for it, Mark, based on the activity that's happened in the world since Wednesday. Good operations is good security. You're skipping. You're right, and a lot of times that is overlooked. Like the simplest things that would have prevented a lot of these so-called 0 days and some of these things is just paying attention to operations and looking at the CVEs and making sure you're patched and making sure you don't have unauthorized software and stuff like that. So you're right. Good operations is good security. The better your operations, the less onerous security has to be. But it seems like you guys wrote this book, and it makes sense to write this type of book. It will stand up. One of the fears I hear from most authors, by the time I finish the book, it's irrelevant. But when you're writing books about scripting and coding, it's relevant. You always get the basics when you go to Python. You always go get the history of how Linux was created when you go through this stuff. So it's not like there are major changes to the way a language is put together, right? And so when you can write books like this, it's always a great reference, right? And it's always a loaner. You know a book is good when you can loan it out and you ask for it back. Like, I want my book back. And do not crease the paper. Don't crease my pages, okay? And don't highlight it.
No highlighters, no back. Yeah.
Because I'll do it if you don't tell me. I'm like, oh, man, that's pretty good. Ooh, that's not my book. And so this book, it seems like it's going to stand up as a basis for, if you need a quick reference to do it. And it'll make you go to it before you have to just run to the big bad internet to be able to go do it. Because I'll go say, where did I see that And now you can look at the book and you could query the book inside of. Now that you have a plugin for it. So I like keeping coding books. And it's probably one of the books that I don't really donate to the library because they're always relevant, right? Yeah.
Well,
And I don't throw them away. I always donate my books, right? So someone can have them.
You just don't keep them on the back wall to look smart. That's good, man. That's good.
Just the ones with my name on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can go back and just find errors and like, golly.
Well,
Go ahead.
Carissa was not the tech editor on those, so we have to expect.
And it shows. It shows.
But the one thing interesting about the tech editing, and this is for folks who are curious about the book writing process, is like I would get the script, I would write it, I'd send it back to the author. No, I would say I don't even think it would go back to the author. It would go to the editor, and the editor would check it. Is that how it went? And so you guys didn't get to see, like sometimes didn't get to see the changes as they were made, and nobody really saw the other folks' chapters while they were writing, which can make it very difficult when you're writing. People are getting chapters done at different pace. But that was one of the strange things is like I never saw the editor's notes. Only the author would see that. I didn't get to see any of that. So it was super interesting how that process goes.
Yeah, it's writing a book seems to be harder now than it was back in the past. We have more technology and everything else. It just seems like it's harder.
If you need a mark who's going to push you to finish your chapters and to finish your stuff and to get started, everybody needs a mark on their team when they're writing a book.
Yeah.
The floggings will continue. Right?
Well, and at least for me, that was the biggest difficulty for me because trying to get these chapters done was right in the middle of this AI tour and all this other crap, and I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, it's tough when you have a busy schedule. Which reminds me why I stopped doing it. So
right.
Now the floodgates have opened again. I haven't so for a while, honestly, I have just been doing ebooks or PDFs. But I'm trying to be better at sleep, and that means less screens late at night. And so what I like about this is that I could get this book in paperback, right? Yeah. But then you have the GitHub repo where I can just go copy the query, right? Because I don't have to go and just type it out manually on my screen later. I feel like I need to have it right there so that I have to copy paste everything. So I just like that from a learning perspective, giving people those options.
So I have a question.
Then the book falls on your face while you're in bed.
I'll say, hey, put your right out with that KQL book. Like, no NyQuil needed, right? Like, you'll just boom, gone.
My CISSP book, I swear that was like I got 8 hours of sleep every night after reading that puppy before bed. Like, oh man,
who you telling?
Dry. Yeah,
it was definitely ambient in paper form to do it, knock you out. So I have a question for everybody on the thing here, really quick.
All right, and then come back because I have something.
So, if this book was an audiobook, and we don't know if it will or will not, Ron, who would you like to narrate the book? You can have anybody in the world. Who would you want to narrate your book?
No, I would always. Let's see, maybe Darth Vader.
So
maybe
James Earl Jones. Okay.
Yeah, maybe Bruce Campbell. Maybe Bruce Campbell. He's a nut.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about
you,
Mark?
This is easy. Oh, I got an easy one. If you want me to go, Mark.
Oh, we'll go, Matt.
Christopher Walken. Like, who else?
Oh my goodness, that would be so good.
The drama.
We got
drama.
Carissa.
I was gonna say Matthew McConaughey, but I think that's because if you use it for a sleep, he knocks you right out. Like, I don't know if you guys have the Calm yet, but he has a story on there, a sleep story, and he puts you right out. So I think if we used him, people might buy our book for multiple reasons, to learn KQL and then to also
he's stronger than he's stronger than his voice is stronger than the wild turkey he advertises to put you to sleep. Will knock you right out. So Mark, what about you?
I was gonna say Tina Fey because of the audiobooks I listened to, I think I liked hers the best. Like the Bossy Pants book, I thought was great. But then y'all went like comedian. I mean, I was like, I don't know, I'd have to think harder. But that was the first one that came to mind was Tina Fey.
So I'm a date. Yeah, I know Brody's the youngest on here. He is. But maybe. How many of you remember the hilarious Router Guard website where they would have celebrities talk about just crazy networking? I remember they had Paris Hilton talking about BGP. So they would come in and do parodies about really deep technologies, and they act as though they had Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about OSPF or something like that. You know, if the packet went the wrong way, like I'll be back and stuff like that. So, wow to God, I've been trying to find that. I've been looking the way map. It was hilarious back in the day to just see people that you're trying to say they couldn't have wrote this, right? I would love to see a book have chapters that are sort of written in personalities of certain individuals, but still try to convey a message, right? And do it. Ron, you
Well,
said you
these
had
I
something?
don't know if
are
they're
in their
read by our
personalities.
editor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I do my best thinking when I'm drinking. I could definitely, I'll go ahead and narrate your book. So let me tell you what happened with this day. Well, anyway,
Yeah, so
go
we
ahead,
have
Rob.
a comment on Twitter or X, which actually we've been surprised recently is like our largest live audience, right? But
Mhm.
I actually figured out where somebody said this, and I want to point this out, and then we can discuss because it says if you need 6 people to explain a query language, you can safely assume it's bloated and too complex. And after working multiple years with Azure Monitor, I can definitely confirm this. KQL is the easy to me. Maybe again, it's subjective, but I think it's absolutely the easiest query language that has ever been invented. Yeah, there's a lot of operators, but you only really need a handful of them, to tell you the truth, unless you're doing something super complex. What is your all's thoughts on that? Because
I'm highly opinionated. Can I get mine?
Oh, Edward, go ahead, please. Not our guest. Go
Because
first.
I don't talk much, but when
Yeah,
I
you're
got
right.
something to say, I'll say it. To the person who made that comment, I get it.
yeah,
The query is not bloated. Your data set is. That's what it is. How about you make your data set that you ask this thing to go back and find me? Give me every word, every sentence that started with the word the. Well, of course you're going to give back this right here, because I've crashed a query by searching for a letter. But I would say if it's before you consider it bloated, it just looks like the way that you're actually using the language. And there have been several online um, uh, blogs and courses on how to write efficient and optimize KQL queries. And the query language is going to get better with AI because it's going to suggest that you write it this way. Thank you, Robert Disney. You want to know about optimizing and using code to write better code? Listen to our show with Robert Disney. It's scary, right? Seeing what you can do with code. So, and I get it. It's opinion, right? I get it. That's just my 4 cents with inflation. There you go.
well, and considering, I think Matt would be someone great to speak to this. Matt uses it every day, my guess. So, I mean,
Yes.
and you didn't start out as a super expert, right?
No, I think it's very forgiving language. So you don't need to be super precise with it, especially if you're not dealing with huge data sets. So I think that's what I find it easy. Like if you're just looking for something, you can throw a contains at it, or you can throw an equals at it. In our team we deal with huge data sets, and I occasionally get emails from the owners of clusters saying, "My bill, are you going to be paying that?" But I think for the most part, you can just start really simple, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And that's what I like about it as well. And like Carissa said earlier, there's a million ways to go about it. As long as you're getting the results that you're after, you don't need to make the world's most beautiful or elegant queries. You just got to get the results you're after. And if you're using something like advanced hunting that you get with like Defender, throw as many queries and things like that as you want at it. It doesn't really matter. So that's what I always tell customers is like, you don't get charged for writing bad queries. As if you did, like I'd have the biggest bill of all. Like half of mine are bad. So
I'm having to go back and get good again. I was never great because I'm covering Sentinel again, versus the other products. I'm like, oh my God, how quickly you forget this stuff if you don't do it every day, right?
I have something for you, by the way. I always have things to share. There is I don't know if you know this or not. There is a KQL prompt book within Copilot for Security where you literally Do you want Defender or Sentinel? Do you give it the table name, the time range, query result, and then what you want the results to display, and it'll do it for you. Create the query for you.
Very cool.
Awesome.
If you're interested.
Asking
I just want to
too.
comment on that, on the bloated part too, is that I think KQL is one of those languages where it's not very difficult, but what you can do with it is so diverse and grand across logging that's why there's so many. I mean, we all have everybody who wrote and contributed to the book have different roles, and they all use it differently, and they have many queries to use. So I don't think it's just a very diverse and definitive language, right? So I think that's what's so great about it at the same time. I don't know if you saw there was a comment in the chat that people were asking about, like, any suggestions for first time book writers. So I didn't know if you saw that comment, but I think
was that? There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a good question.
I think we have a show coming up about that in the fall. Is that that's a certification theme that we're having, but we should probably dedicate a show for aspiring authors, and get a few on to say, hey, how do you start? How do you know you're really up to it? If you don't like writing during the day, you're not going to like writing a book, right? If you're the person that wasted the last minute to document your project, you're probably not going to be a good author, right? And you probably have to like, you really have to like what you are writing about. You can't do it just because you want, publishing credits, right? And being able to do it.
Well, I think a piece of the question probably too is not just, how do you get started writing, but I think it's the other piece, kind of like Mark was talking about, that form that Microsoft Press has. How do you get that entry or that introduction into that world of writing or authorship, right?
I think.
What about the question though, Matt and everyone? What do you think? What's just quick tips for first authors?
Well, I was a first time author with this one, and I would say, like, write something you're passionate about and you enjoy. If you find it interesting yourself, I think other people are more likely to find it interesting as well. And like include, like what I tried to do, and I know Rod and Mark did as well. It's like try to make it really personable and things like that. Like include your experiences and things like that. So in my section, like when I was on Dart, our IR team, while I was writing it, so I'd be doing like two weeks of ransomware, and then I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. That's like something, customers are going to face, or there's business email compromise and things like that. So give it like a real world flair rather than just like reproducing the documentation. I think, at least to me, that's what I find interesting in books. Like anyone can go read the doco. How do I apply the doco to my job, whether you're a sysadmin, an ops person, or someone in security?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you should write a topic that also doesn't have like a lot of stuff already written about it. That makes it a little harder to like, oh, I'm going to do a book about, on-prem exchange or something. Like there's a lot of that stuff out there. But like, you don't have to be an expert to write it. And what I mean by that is the act of having to write stuff will force you to go deeper and learn about the topic. Like there was stuff in the KQL, like I just like assumed that's how it worked. And I'm like writing it. I'm like, why does it do that? And like, I didn't know. So like we had to ask, I asked Carissa, sometimes she knows, sometimes she doesn't know. And we started like bumping around different people. And then like eventually we got an answer. I'm like, why does it do it that way? Like you learn more about the thing that you're writing about by the act of writing it. Mm-hmm. So I think if there's something that you're interested in that there's like that you think is missing, like that's one of the reasons why we did this KQL book was like, I wish this book existed 4 years ago when I was trying to get familiar with KQL. Right. So think about that's the stuff that you wish existed and you have passion for, an idea for, and you're like, I don't know, 50, 60% of the way there, like you'll pick up the rest as you go, like the act of writing.
Yeah.
Great tips.
Carissa, did you give your input on that? I'm not sure.
I mean, I didn't write. I just was the technical editor, but I would love to, eventually do that. But I guess if you're going to, my thing is very same as Mark, like make it be something that you also maybe are good at, but you want to learn more about, because you will learn a ton by writing a book. You need to learn a ton. when you're writing to make it interesting. So
You know, you can't lower your credit and your importance to the book. A technical editor is just like the punter. You save more games because of everybody else.
It's a
I
good
promise you,
analogy.
right? You save the game, right? When they've been deficient, you go back and go, had you come to me first, we could have probably got this done. I know that this is one of our tighter shows here, and I know we were trying to give away a book or two with a contest. We'll probably figure it out. But I thought I had a good question here, but not so much. It's you know, what writing a book, there still seems to be a persona of perfectionism that the book cannot have errors. But people are not, they don't have an anxiety to write a blog. It doesn't seem like the same editorial criteria is even. You can, my blog, when I do choose to write one or something, it has more typos in it than just the opening sentence, right? But people say, oh, he's writing a blog, right? But if you're writing a book, and maybe it's because people associate book with paper. Paper is permanent. Paper costs money. I spent money on the book. It has to be perfect. When you're writing a blog, it just seems sort of it's loose. And I think that people that I know that write blogs and this and stuff on the interweb just freeze up when you say you gotta publish it.
Mhm.
You know, it's I don't get that. Like you write prolifically this, and someone asks you to write a book, and maybe it's deadlines. Maybe that's the thing that intimidates people about it. It's the perceived deadlines that you have to have because you have the evil taskmaster that is the publisher and the technical reviewer will cracking the whip on you when it's not right. I don't know.
What do you think, Mark?
I mean, so the first book I wrote was the identity chapters for the exam rep SC900, and one of the topics that I wrote about in there was the passwordless. At the time, it was like pick the number, like the number match stuff. And I knew it was going to be switching to typing the number in. Like at the time I was writing it, I knew that was coming because we had customers in private preview. But I can't put it in there because, like, what if it doesn't ship or it changes and stuff like that? So, like, I think you just have to. Like, it's fine. Like, we're all IT people. We get it. Like it's going to change. As long as it's not like fundamentally incorrect, right? Like UI stuff is going to change, new things are going to pop up and things like that. Like, I think if someone's wanting perfection in the book, like they're not the right audience. Like they should be using this to learn, and like that gives you tools and skills to like adapt because it's always going to be changing. Like if you don't want to be in change, like this is the wrong field for you.
Yeah, I with enough experience when I'm reading books, if there is a technical faux pas or a typo, experience grooves your mind to make it correct. You just read over it. Your mind will just read over it because you know what they're trying to convey. The person that wrote the book, right? So you
Well,
don't
I'm sure there's
nitpick.
typos in our stuff. Like I'm sure there's typos in my chapter specifically. Like there's no doubt.
It gives it character to a book, right? Some of my favorite science fantasy and science fiction, science fantasy is already Salvatore. I read his books and there are definitely typos and timeline inconsistencies, but I've been reading this guy for 30 years. He could write it backwards, and I'm still going to love the book, right? Because I like the writing style. I like what he's trying to convey. And books have that thing about them. So I keep a shelf over here of stuff, and they have a sentimental value. And I donate my books to the library for those who can't get access to it or may have, limited internet accessibility. Having a good book is always good. I don't have anything else. This has been a really, really good show. I would say pub the book some more so people know how to get it. Rob, how can I get your book? Matt, how can I get your book? Mark, how can
Amazon. In the show notes, I'll include the Amazon link. I'll also include the link to Microsoft Press because they love it when we do that. So,
do you get
Amazon's
a
like the I don't know, book? I can't even think of the word. They're just like the clearinghouse for books. That's so easy to do. But
So Rod sprung up on me at the beginning of the show that we need to have some type of contest to be able to give away a free book. We would like to have given it away on the show that's about the book, but we will have a contest and be able to get two signed copies out. You gonna sign them, Rod?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
And we'll get them out to our listeners. And I'm definitely going to patronize it just because I want the book. I'm by no means a KQL expert, and I'm glad I'm not. I may get the stupid notion in my head to write a book. I'm going to do that. Books are for book writers. Well, thanks everyone for coming on the show. I am proud of us for not having too much of a divergence over the activities that have occurred with two significant outages. Microsoft had an outage, had nothing to do with the endpoints, but for those who were in the cloud, there was something that disrupted. And obviously, the one that got the publish, got all the press was the thing that most affected people, which is their endpoint workstations. And shout out for those who are on the front line, who took the beating, who took the punches, who showed leadership without having to have the title. And I'll harp on that as I leave. If you're going to be a leader, lead from up front. Edward Walton leads by example, not by giving examples. You can put that in a book. There you go, everybody. So stay tuned next week. We have a good show. We're actually almost booked through the year, aren't we, Rod?
We're booked through almost all of November at this point too. So
and we haven't turned people away. We might have to start doubling up the shows in a month. We got a couple of theme months. So to all our supporters, listeners, and viewers, thank you for it. Thanks, Matt, for coming on the show. Thanks, Mark. I finally get to see your face. I've known about you for years. By coming on the show, you sort of self-obligated to come on and host while some of us can take vacation. And Carissa dropped before we can put that onus on her. We do ask our visitors to come host the show sometime, and do it. Everyone,
KQL takeover.
KQL takeover. You gotta get us some shirts. KQL rocks, right? We need to start a fraternity. Kappa Kuma Lambda. What does K stand for in the Greek language? I don't know what Q stands for. I know what Lambda and I know it's Kappa. What could we get Q? We need to start a fraternity. Yeah, do that. I'm telling you, Rod, you gotta listen to me. I got a thinker up here.
Yeah, all I can think of is Revenge of the Nerds.
Okay, what's wrong being a nerd? That's fine.
Lambda.
Nursing the whole majority of the wealth and the market cap it seems around here. I should have been a nerd earlier rather than a jock. Everyone, thanks for listening to our show. We really appreciate it. We hope you find us entertaining as well as informative. If you have any questions, Discord, Noodle should be running the Discord. I can't tell because I'm not logged on the Discord. Matt, as always, good to see you again, sir. I need to pick your brain. I got it on here about some dark stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I was late. I'm in London.
We had a presentation by the Microsoft Ghost team last week.
Oh, yeah. My team there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got some questions I want to ask you about that. So, Mark, thank you, sir, for coming on. Thank you for, truncating your name on the show because I could not have pronounced it all the way through. So I appreciate that when I did it. All right, everyone. See you next week. Peace.
All right.